Verse 7 of Nehemiah 1, we acted very corruptly against you and have not kept the commandments and statutes, nor the ordinances which you commanded your servant Moses. Remember, I pray, the word that you commanded your servant Moses, saying, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the nations. But if you return to me and keep my commandments and do them, though some of you were cast out to the farthest part of the heavens, yet I will gather them from there and bring them to the place which I have chosen as a dwelling place for my name. Now, these are your servants, your people, whom you have redeemed by your great power. He acknowledges it's only God that's good. All of us have been corrupt. There's none of us that can hold a banner above our heads and call ourselves righteous. We cannot, if we carry a banner of self-righteousness over our heads in condemning accusation against those who are corrupt. I just take this example from Nehemiah. Not that they're not corrupt, but the humility. Look, Jesus was numbered among the transgressors that he may make intercession for the transgressors. He is the only hope for the transgressor. Not accusation is not hope for the transgressor. Only the intercession of Christ, the vicarious crucifixion, the paying of the price of the death, of the wrath, of the condemnation upon all of us as transgressors, so that any that come to him, he can say, I bear a scar for that. I have redeemed you. I am not ashamed of you. Enter in. So here, Nehemiah is acknowledging, now these are your servants and your people, whom you have redeemed by your great power and by your strong hand. Lord, I pray, please let your ear be attentive to the prayer of your servant and to the prayer of your servants who desire to fear your name. Even if we don't find we're in a right heart of worship, we can go to God and ask him, make me willing to be willing to live out your will, to know your love, to be intimately connected with you, and let your servant prosper this day. I am your servant, he's saying. I do what I do for your sake, that your word may be fulfilled, that your people may be restored to your promises, that you may have your heart in your people. Let your servant prosper this day, I pray, and grant him mercy in the sight of this man, for I was the king's cupbearer. He understood. Nehemiah understood he was in a place of privilege. For what would he use that place of privilege? And if he was a cupbearer, he had the utmost trust. He had shown himself faithful and sacrificial and worthy of the deepest level of intimate trust on behalf of the king. And he is using this position not for himself, but now he is asking God, let me have obtained this position, that I may have favor from you before the king. This man, he calls him a man. He understands every king is just a man given authority by heaven to take responsibility over the good, over the welfare, over heaven's desire for people. That's the purpose of authority. It is power to walk out a responsibility. Heaven has given a God-given responsibility to bring good to the earth, to make life good for others. So now he's saying, give me favor so that this relationship may serve you, Lord. And it came to pass in the month of Nisan. So then he goes before the king, and the king recognizes there's something heavy on him. He's apparently normally a person of great joy and pleasure, and the king recognizes. He says, the king says, "Why is your face sad, since you are not sick? This is nothing but the sorrow of your heart." God is already granting him favor. He's opening the eyes and the heart of the king to recognize something in Nehemiah. Then I became dreadfully afraid. In front of this king, in front of this king, if you speak out of turn, your life could be taken. If you show up out of turn, your life could be taken. So he has this chance to open his mouth, and the fear of the Lord hits him. So he says, "May the king live forever. Why should my face not be sad when the city, the place of my father's tomb, lies in waste, and its gates are burned with fire?" So what's interesting is I love Nehemiah's humility and vulnerability here. He's not only humble to count himself, to count himself and his, father's house, his family, among those that have transgressed, though they cannot be personally linked to the sin and devastation. But now he admits, when the king, when I asked the Lord to have the king notice me, and when the king noticed me, he said, "I was afraid." I just love the vulnerability here. There's no guile in Nehemiah. There's no self-righteousness. I went to the king and I told him, instead there's just this complete posture of humility. He's not in a contest with anyone. He is seeking the help of God, that he may be a helper of God. The king said to me, "What do you request?" So I prayed to the God of heaven. So he just quickly prays, "God, help me. What do I request? God, help me." And I said to the king, "If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in your sight, I ask that you send me to Judah, to the city of my father's tomb, that I may rebuild it." He wants to do the work of God. So the king said to me, the queen also sitting beside him, this could be Esther, "How long will your journey be? And when will you return?" So it pleased the king to send me, and I set him a time. So then further I said to the king, he knows God has given him favor. He knows he is on the Lord's errand. This is what gives him boldness, not his own interests. I can easily be offended when I am someplace where my own interests are at the top of my mind, and I am disappointed. If I am not honored, if I am not received, if I am not recognized, I am offended. This is my opportunity. I'm not saying it doesn't hurt, it doesn't feel bad. I'm not saying the other person's right or wrong. They may not be, but what's been revealed for me is that there's something in me that had a self-interest that's been disappointed. I am offended. I have been wronged. So this is an opportunity. If narcissism has come and derailed my progress, what was the point of my progress? If I'm derailed, if narcissism comes to derail, but I just press in all the more, right? I mean, things might be stopped, things might be torn down, there might be oppression, there might be pressure, but I just go deeper in the Lord. So when we find ourselves offended, that's just a good clue for us. Go deeper, mine deeper into the treasuries of the Lord. So further I said to the king, so now remember, Nehemiah went all the way down. He is emptied of his own agenda. And now, as the Lord has bestowed favor upon him, boldness and courage increases in Nehemiah, because he is not after his own. He's not after his own agenda. He's not looking for his own honor at all. This is a major key in not succumbing to narcissistic attacks. The Lord told me one time, as a number of you have heard, Hilary, it was your selfishness that led you into victimhood. What could I say? It was true. When it was my life that was affected, when it was my dreams, when it was my marriage, when it was my opportunities, when it was my gifts, when it was my friendships, when it was, all of these things that had been so devastated by, narcissistic just culture of, rejection and oppression and dishonesty and whatnot, that was where I became derailed. That was how I became derailed and began to find myself climbing on that spectrum of narcissism, because now I felt I had the right to hate. Now I felt I had the right to be rude. I had the right to judge. I had the right to reject.